Hey, I'm Anthony, and I'm so excited that you're here to learn something new. Get ready to make your work easier with some awesome Excel knowledge. Let's get started. Hey everyone, I'm Anthony, and today we're going to spend some time learning to build a simple gradebook. I know that there are lots of templates out there on the internet for gradebooks for teachers that have it all built out for you, which is great. Definitely go on, if you find one that you love, download that and use it. The benefit of watching this particular video, though, is I'm going to walk you through how that thing was built, or some of the formulas that usually go behind gradebooks like this, and the formatting and how to build it. The reason that you'd want to learn all of that is if you ever needed to go into your gradebook and tweak it or add a feature or understand what's going on, you're going to get that here, as opposed to just having that template and having to work with what you're given. So one thing I'll add before we jump right in is that I'm going to be really casual. So if I make a mistake or if something doesn't format right or anything like that, I'm going to actually troubleshoot it on camera and you'll be able to see how to fix it. I want you to realize that I'm just a real person and I'm behind a laptop just like many of you are. There's not some corporate thing, or I'm not creating content as a gimmick. I really love Excel and I love teaching. I work in education and this is a passion of mine. So I want to do it as real and as connected to you as possible so you get as much out of it as you can. Okay, let's jump right in. The final product that we're shooting for is this right here. Is a basic gradebook that will allow you to track your students, enter their assignments, and it will calculate their percent in the class and their final grade as it stands. And it will give you that letter as well as the percent. So we're going to cover in this video basically just setting this up. It's going to look like this when we're done. We're not going to have the percent in the grade. And then in the next two videos, the first one will be percent, and we'll get that in. And then the final one will be getting the letter grade in using formulas. And we'll do that using a grade scale that is changeable if you ever change your grade scale. Okay, let's look at actually creating this gradebook. The first thing that you need to know is we're going to create this using a table. A table allows you a number of really nifty features. Let me jump back to that final gradebook. The first thing is it allows you to reference it as a whole unit, and that, as well as whole columns, can be their own unit. You'll see why that's useful in the next two videos as we work with formulas. You'll see why instead of having to type out a range of cells in the formula, we can type in the table and it will automatically update my formula as I add more data to it. So that's one. The next is I'm able to add as many columns and rows, in this case rows, as I want, and it doesn't break my formulas. So if I insert another column here, you'll see that my formulas have all still continued to work. And if I edit this and add some more data, so let's say this kid, this is another test and it's worth 25, and this kid got a 20, you'll see that the grades update automatically. Even though I added new data, it's still working. So I'm going to delete that out of here so that way we leave this intact. I'm just using the Control- shortcut on my keyboard to do that. And let's talk about the last couple things that's a benefit to the tables is you could see that I could add as many rows and as many columns as I wanted. The formatting continued to copy along with it, so it moved my formatting. I don't have to keep reformatting as long as I set it up right. And then last, the sort and filter tools are automatically enabled for you. So if you do need them to sort and filter your data, you can do that. You don't actually have to go and enable it or use this menu at all. They're already enabled. Okay, so that's all about tables. Let's talk about the columns that we're going to include. With a table, it needs to be laid out in a header and then data in rows below it. One more time back over here. I have my header row and then all my data below it. This is how tables are laid out. So let's create it just like that. I'm going to say student ID, just like before, and first name and last name. And before we move on, let me just talk really briefly about this. A student ID, a unique identifier or a unique piece of data for each row or each chunk, is very, very useful. If you have the opportunity to add a student ID or any other kind of unique, there's only going to be this number for this set of data, always do it. The reason is if you ever need to link data back to this particular set that you're working with, you can. It's much easier. So Right up front, I would say just take my word for it, and if you ever learn VLOOKUP or if you've ever used VLOOKUP or other formulas like that, you'll see how powerful that is. It can be a total time saver. Always include a unique ID, so student ID in this case. The second thing is best practice, in my opinion, is to chunk your data so you have the smallest usable piece in a single column or a single cell. So I don't put first and last name together in a single cell, and I don't do last comma first. It's much easier to put data back together than it is to pull it apart, for the most part. So I would definitely say, if given the opportunity, absolutely do first and last name in separate columns. Okay, enough about that. Let's move on. I'm going to add my assignments, and I'm just doing this in caps because it's preference. There's really no reason. I just like it because it helps it to stand out. And I think this is what I did in my sample grade books. And final, just so that it matches. It doesn't matter. You could do whatever assignments you wanted. You could call them whatever you wanted. It's totally up to you. And last, I'm going to say %, and I'm going to say grade. Okay, so now that we've got our columns in, let's actually create this as a table. So I selected my data and then a first row. You don't have to do that. It's just a habit. And I'm going to come to the Format as Table button. And I'm going to choose this particular style. You could choose any style you wanted. I choose this one because it's got the least amount of formatting, and I can apply more formatting myself later. You can do that with these others, but I find it a lot easier to start simpler and add as opposed to start more complex and take away. So I'm going to choose that, and then I'm going to say, yes, my table does have headers. If I left it unchecked, it would insert headers for me, and my data wouldn't work properly. I need the stuff I've entered to be the headers. Okay. Next up, I'm going to highlight all of my columns, and I'm going to drag them all the same width. And when I highlight them and just drag one, it makes them all the same width. You could definitely not do this. You could make them all different widths. Totally up to you. Next, I'm going to insert colors just to help the sections stand out. So my student data, what did I do? I did green, I think. And then my assignments, I did in orange. And then my grades, I did in blue. Totally arbitrary. I just picked them because they looked okay and they helped the sections to stand out. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to flip over to this gradebook that I have completed, this first version, and I'm going to copy out my student data, and then I'm going to copy out the grades. Just to make it faster, I could enter it all manually. There's no reason to do that if I've already got it ready. It's just dummy data, so I just need it available. And then the next thing I'm going to add is my points possible row. Oops. Now, a couple things about this. First, my formatting is wrong, so I'm going to bring that points possible down so it fits in the cell. I could do a shrink to fit. I could change the formatting in a number of different ways. I just chose to do it that way. I'm going to choose it so it's centered. Totally up to you. But one problem here is that as I added a row below my data, Excel thought, oh, that's got to be part of that table, so it included it as part of the table. But you'll see in a second, that's not what we want. We actually don't want this as part of our data, so as we add new rows, you'll see that if I were to add more students, my points possible would be mixed up inside my data. Definitely don't want that. So how do we fix that? In this bottom right corner here, you see that there's this like Tetris block looking thing, whatever that is. If I click that, or first if I hover over it, my cursor changes to this double-sided arrow, and if I click and drag up, you'll think that it deleted your data, but when I let go, it actually pulled the points possible row outside of the table. So now as I add more rows, you'll see that it kind of sticks at the bottom there, which is exactly what we want. So I'm going to format this. I'm actually going to format my table itself first. Let's start there. And I want to add borders, and the border I want is the thick outside border. So I selected the whole table, and I chose thick outside borders, and it added that thick line. Next thing I'm going to do the same thing down here. Thick outside borders. It's already chosen for me, so I can just click that and it will do it. And from copying my data over, you'll see that these borders came over automatically. Let me see if they continue to add. So they are. Excel already knows what to do, but I'm missing a border here. You see that the thick outside border didn't actually copy up. So let's just add it back just in case. So let's select the table column itself, and let's come into the borders menu and choose more borders. And I'm going to do the thicker border here, and I'm going to say the left side, choose OK, and now my border continues all the way. Do the same thing here, but in this case, I'll choose the thicker line and do the right border and choose OK. Last couple things I'm going to do, I'm going to format this bottom row, the points possible row, to be the lighter version of my header row. So it's going to be this lighter orange. And same thing here, but with blue. And that's about it. I'm going to add my points possible in as well. So we'll say homeworks are worth 5, quizzes are worth 10, tests are worth 25, and the final is worth 50. In the last couple formats, I'm going to bold this, and I'm actually going to put it in the same color because it's part of that. And that's about it. I think that we've got a great looking start to a gradebook that I can already add more assignments to and add more students to. Up next, we're going to talk about the percent column and actually getting the percentages to calculate on their own, which is super useful, so that way you don't have to manually calculate it. If a parent calls, you can just say, yeah, I know the percent, and just give it out. Whatever you want. Student asks, hey, what's my score? You can do all that. Just as a little extra bonus, if you want this particular document that I'm working with all of the sample gradebooks and the steps that I'm working with, I'm going to post that on my website. Also, along with this video, as an extra little upgrade for making it all the way to the end, I've added a checklist or like a summary of this video that includes all of those best practices that I mentioned. The chunking data and the unique ID and all that stuff is going to be in a simple one-page document that you can get just for watching this video, absolutely free. All I ask is that you drop your name and email into the form on my site, and I will shoot that over to you. And again, it's totally free, so I hope you take advantage of that. Okay, like I said, next video is about percentages and formulas, so I can't wait to see you there. Thanks so much for watching. Catch you later.